So today, I'd like to talk about how often a worship leader should add new songs to their set list. I'm excited to talk about it. Welcome to Blazing Guitars. So before we jump into it, I want to give the caveat that this might not be where your church is at. And the way that we do it is not necessarily the way that your church should do it. I think it's really personal. It depends on your congregation. It depends on you. It depends on the skill of your band, and it depends on your pastors. So don't take this video as this is something that you have to do, and if you don't do it, you're a failure. Take this as something to think through and maybe some guidelines if you've never thought through this before, and take it and piece it apart. But this is absolutely not something that you have to do. So the first thing that I would do is to sit down and figure out how long you think it would take your band to realistically master a new song. And I'm not saying, just barely pull it off on a Sunday. I'm saying, how long will it take them to really get to know a song and to have the pieces memorized and to have the lyrics memorized and the harmonies and the order and the structure? Think about how long that process is. Then what I would do is to work backwards from that and determine how often you should be adding new songs from that spot. For us, what I found is that with a lot of practice, so we do 2 practices a week, we can realistically add a new song about once a month. And what we do in that process is I'll introduce it acoustically first, and then we'll do it as a band. And then that way I can get some feedback from people and see how the song kind of sits with people, and then bring the rest of the band into it and play it together. So sit down and think through, what's that number for you? Now, if you're the only person, then that brings us into the next point. And that point is, how long does it realistically take your congregation to connect with a new song? So for me, what I found is that our congregation just takes a little bit of time to connect with a new song. So I have to be very, very careful and very aware of that. So what I'll do is I'll introduce a new song and then play it for a couple weeks, a couple months. And then I'll ask different members in our congregation and just get some feedback on it and ask the pastors and see where they're at with the song. And if they're really, really enjoying it, then I know that I can move on and add another song. And if they're not, then I might give it a little bit more time to just kind of sit with people and give them a chance to connect with it. So then you take those 2 things, right? How long does it realistically take your band to learn a new song? How long does it realistically take your congregation to learn a new song? Now, once you have those 2 figured out, then what I would do is to come up with a plan and a schedule and sit down with your pastors and talk that through. And what I found is that if you put in a lot of thought at that point, I think your pastors would be more than happy to let you run with it. But you want to make sure that you are under their authority and giving them a voice in what you're doing. So those are kind of the basic steps that I would take when you're trying to figure out this schedule. Now, with that, I think is a word of warning that I think a lot of worship leaders can either add songs too fast or never add any music. And there's nothing wrong inherently with both of those. But I think for the people that add songs too fast, I think it's really easy to add in a ton of worship music that your congregation is not connecting with at all. And then for the people that never add new stuff in, I think it's easy for the congregation to lose interest in music that they hear over and over and over again, year after year. So take those 2 things and weigh them out and figure out for you and your congregation with your pastors and with all of that, figure out what the correct balance is for you. Now, one other practical idea that I've implemented is I'll have a list of like 5 to 10 songs that I really want to add to our worship set. And I'll create a playlist on Spotify and then add a couple filler songs. Maybe it's songs that we're already doing at church or just other really good songs. And then I'll play that playlist at the beginning and end of our worship set, just in the background as people are mingling and talking. And maybe your church is not set up to do that, but what I found is that it kind of subconsciously introduces your congregation to songs that are coming up. And so they might sit there and think, oh wow, that song is kind of cool that I'm hearing right now. And then in a couple months or 2, when you actually introduce the song, there'll be a little bit of familiarity to what they're singing. The second thing that I've done is we will always repeat a song from the previous week. And if we have a new song, we'll repeat 2 songs from the previous week. And there's a couple reasons why we do this. One is that if a new person walks in and they don't know any of the songs that you're playing, if they come back next week, then they'll at least know one song. And that's something that they can hold on to. And then what we found is that people will become more familiar with the set list faster because they're hearing the songs a little bit more often than if we just played a new set every single week. And then with the new songs, it has that same effect for the whole congregation. So you play it the first time on week 1, you play it again on week 2, and then a month later, or whenever you repeat it again, and then we'll even repeat it a second time. So in the span of 2 months, our church has heard a new song 4 times. And that just gives a lot of chance for them to become familiar with the new song and to sit with it and to feel it out. And then that just helps them connect with it a little bit faster and a little bit more smooth. So that's all I had today. If you have thoughts on this or questions, please leave a comment below. Or if you have a specific schedule that you use to put out new music, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see what you guys are doing and hear your ideas. If you would like to jump into further discussion, I have a Discord linked in the description below, and there's a Patreon also linked in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.